And welcome back, Year 9s. I hope you had a good half term. Today we're going to carry on looking at our unit on the Anglo-Saxons and Normans. Just want to begin by saying I'm not actually a cat. I am, in fact, actually a teacher. I'm not able to turn this filter off, so I'm just going to roll with it. Okay, so today's lesson's very much focused on the role and importance of the Anglo-Saxon church in the Anglo-Saxon society. So the lesson's kind of broken up into two kind of points. The first kind of bit's going to be looking at reminding ourselves what Anglo-Saxon society is like. Then we're going to be focusing actually on the importance of the church in that. So we've got our picture here. This is a photo of Westminster Cathedral in central London, which predates the Normans, okay, and it predates the Norman changes made by Bishop Lanfranc and changes made by the Normans to Christian church in England. So it's very much, this is was the focus of Anglo-Saxon worship at that time. So start activity. Okay, we've got here a brief, and this again, this is kind of reflecting on what we were looking at last session. Looking at this coin, answer this question here. Why do you think historians consider coins to be a useful source of information? Just take 5 minutes here, pause the video, answer this, come back when you're ready. So, again, this is just a reminder of what we were looking at last lesson, just to kind of refresh our mind of what we did before half term. So use the textbook, okay, which is obviously going to be attached, okay. Create a brief mind map, okay, about the Anglo-Saxon legal system. Kind of links in with crime and punishment. You're going to be looking, which you're going to be looking at next unit. Okay, so use page 16 to help create this. There is a challenge task, okay, and have a go at it if you feel up to it. If you want to push your learning up further, pause here, come back when you're ready. Okay, so again, reminding ourselves of the last lesson. Use page 16 of the textbook to help us answer these 5 questions. Pause the video, come back when you're ready. Once again, challenge task if you want to stretch yourself. So the answers then. Okay, important products for English trade, wool and cloth. Western England was particularly suited to sheep rearing, still is very much today. Yeah, particularly Wales and the western border between England and Wales. Eastern England was dry conditions, fertile soil, good for growing crops. Yeah, nice summers. What evidence does this suggest that Anglo-Saxon farming was well organised? 6,000 mills in the country. Where did most of the silver come from? In Germany. Okay, so we've got a brief, very, very brief couple of practice questions here for you to have a go at. Each one's worth 4 marks. Mark a minute. You're looking at essentially 8 to 10 minutes tops. Okay. So 2 features. Remember, describe the feature, explain it. Describe, explain, describe, explain, describe, explain. Okay. So take yourself 10 minutes to have a go at these 2 features of the Anglo-Saxon village, 2 features of the legal system. Pause here, come back when you're ready. Okay, so also have a brief go at giving yourself some self-assessment on this. Okay, on your marks. So mark each one separately. So mark this separate from that one. Okay, give yourself total out of 4 for each one. Okay, come back when you're ready. Right, so that is essentially our summarization, a refresher on Anglo-Saxon society and legal system. Okay, just as I said, very briefly touch on what we looked at before half term. So today we're going to be, the rest of the session is going to be focused on the English church. Now, the English church, Christianity had come to Britain a long, long time before the Normans. It was very popular in Roman times, but the vast majority actually was focused around Celtic saints. And so a lot of it could be argued, a lot of the Anglo-Saxon Christian traditions weren't from Roman times, were actually had come from Ireland or parts of Northern Europe. It was a very traditional organization, okay, very much focused around the people and the village. Yeah, the Anglo-Saxon church was about very much serving the local community. Yeah, the churches were small, wattle and daub mud huts, yeah, built of wood and wattle and daub with thatched roofs, okay, like much of the buildings of the time were. And it was about essentially what the local parish could do for the local people, yeah. A village, 50 odd people, yeah, 10 households, maybe 2 or 3 people, maybe 4 people in a household, very, very small village, served by a pub and a small local church, okay? And it was very much about what the local community people needed. It was also, these small local villages were then collected into large areas. So these larger groups were controlled by bishops. Bishops, unlike the local priests, were rich local landowners. They served on the Witan as part of the king's advisors. Okay. They did not want the local priests being hired and fired except by them. And essentially, they sometimes, I mean, the Norman sources paint them as being corrupt, but remember the Normans were looking to reform the English church anyway. They wanted it as a more of a source of control, okay, and what have you. So there wasn't a great deal of control from Rome. Yeah, English Anglo-Saxon times was led by Rome, but kind of did its own thing. Local priests were actually quite poor. They weren't particularly well educated. They might have small land holdings like a peasant. They were usually married. That's quite an unusual feature, because that's something that then gets scrapped by the Normans, okay? And it went against sort of European reforms, the reforms that are happening in Europe, in France and places like that at the time, that required priests to be celibate. Okay. England also had monasteries and nunneries, so with communities of monks and nuns, okay, led by abbots and abbesses. So I can't highlight that down there. So a monastery has monks in it, and it's run by an abbot. Okay, it might sometimes be called an abbey. Okay, a nunnery is run by nuns. Okay, and is staffed by nuns and is run by an abbess. Okay. Now in Europe, these were fast becoming unpopular. But in England, people often moved to the church as an alternative form of life. Okay, and was still quite important. Now, religion in Anglo-Saxon times was incredibly important. Hey, it was important in Norman times and was important all the way up to sort of 18th, 19th century and beyond, okay? Religion in Anglo-Saxon times was part of everyday life. People genuinely, they were suspicious and they were very superstitious, and they saw religion as an important part of the afterlife was quite important, okay, and it was important to behave in this life so you've got a good time in the afterlife, okay. It was also important to the king, Okay, now you'll remember back, King Edward was quite a pious man anyway. He had planned to become a monk. Okay, he wasn't planning on becoming king. Okay, he spent much of his later years rebuilding Westminster Cathedral. Okay, also it was believed by everybody that the king was an agent of God. Okay, and ultimately God's representative on earth. Okay, so pause the video and answer these questions for me. Come back when you are ready. Okay, so next couple of slides are very much going to be focused on essentially the importance of the English church in Anglo-Saxon times. So at that time, English bishops were not involved in church changes that were happening in Europe. It was very much focused upon the little British Isles. The church was traditional, resisted reforms, and focused particularly in the local areas. It was organised into large areas controlled by bishops. Bishops were rich and important, and they served on the Witan. Local priests were ordinary people. They were not well educated and usually married. There were often tensions between bishops and thanes. Okay. Bishops did not want local priests being appointed by anybody except them, but gradually they were brought under bishops' control. England had monasteries and nunneries, and they were declining in Europe, but an important part of English life. Religion was an important part. It was very, very influential, and people were very much worried about their afterlife. King was seen as an agent of God, and believed God would be quick to punish countries, okay, if their church did not behave appropriately. Okay, so using, if you've got access to a large piece of A3 paper, okay, stick, that'd be great, particularly if it's blank. If not, grab yourself 2 A4 pieces of paper and sellotape them together. And using the previous slides, and the information, using this information here, create a diagram showing the hierarchical structure of Anglo-Saxon Christian church, and in particular, showing its place within Anglo-Saxon society. Okay, pause the video, have a go, come back when you're ready. In summary then, although most Anglo-Saxons were free except for slaves, everybody had obligations and duties. The king was very powerful, made the laws. Local government was administered by local people and officials, and England had a strong economy and effective system of tax. Okay, so to finish off today's session then, there we go. Complete the strengthen and challenge checkpoint questions. Okay. Thank you very much, Year 10s, and I'll catch up with you next time. Bye.